So I am here today with Megan Hueter, who is the Executive Vice President and Head of Digital at Mike Worldwide and Everywhere Agency. Megan and I have known each other for quite some time. We worked at the same company, so a long-term relationship, so very excited about this. But, we are here to talk about the world of sports and the idea that sports creators and sports in general really fuel culture and behavioral change, right? And for us at IRCODE, we are trying to change the way you think about the way you interact with the world around you. Sports is such an impactful cultural driver. And I'd love your perspective on why.
It's a great question, but also my favorite topic to talk about, honestly. I think that culturally, and this is not just in the United States, this is globally, the affinity for people, for audiences to sports is unmatched. There's literally nothing else in culture, in my opinion, that brings a stronger connection between audiences and what they care about. How cute. And I think that that's true at the grassroots level. It's true at the collegiate level. It's true at the professional level, the Olympic level. I mean, it's just pervasive. And it's something that's always been around, honestly. And it's, in my opinion, getting stronger and stronger with media.
Yeah, and I agree. I think that, sports as a culture and an audience, there's so many different ways to connect with it, whether it's through competition or fan base or teams, right? Or a social activity versus like if you don't know the sport itself, you enjoy watching it with people around you. But sports is also saturated, right? So as sports has continued to be more immersive, you have to be a brand that plays in so many different levels. If you take FanDuel, for example, turning from a sports betting platform into a full television network, right, to really progress with the world of sports. Do you find that when you're talking and working with sports brands right now that they feel like they need more support? They need more digital strategy, and what's your advice to them?
100%. I think, yes, every client that we have, this is not unique to the sports portfolio, but literally every client we have is trying to win on digital media no matter what. It's just the reality of our modern day media ecosystem, to be honest. You cannot rely on traditional media anymore. You need to be thinking about the complete picture, as you know, as a CMO. And I think my advice would be, and we're going to get into influencers, I know, in a minute, I think there's a heavy reliance on celebrity, and it's way too heavy. And if you watch the Super Bowl this year, I mean, how many commercials involved the celebrity front and center? Can you remember the brands even that they were associated with, or do you just remember the celebrity, right? And brands can get washed out in that. And I think that there's much more of an opportunity to connect with audiences around specific passions, not at the celebrity level. And I think that's the way to win in the future.
Yeah, and I think you bring up a really interesting point because, we talk about creators and we talk about digital content and how big of a role that plays right now in really building any type of brand or any type of league or network or show. But there is this whole community that exists that is at the micro level, right? And I think the fascinating thing about sports, Megan and I are working on a project right now for IRCODE where we are giving our tool to creators and putting it in their hands. And sports is one of the categories that I asked her to explore. And I thought her team was going to come back to me with athletes, with NIL, with college, really across the spectrum. What she came back to me with was podcasts and fan groups. And they had the highest engagement level of any creator that you offered up to me. And I found it fascinating, and I looked into it a lot more. And creators who play in the sports world, not just from an athlete perspective, but any type of relationship, have a 3.5 times higher engagement rate. And that in itself shows the power of that. So I'd love your perspective on how you could use that to your advantage if you want to play into this cultural space.
I think the important thing about sports is not necessarily, yes, there's the sport itself, and you have influencers like athletes and coaches that are kind of embedded within it. And that's a whole strategy in and of itself. But really the opportunity is what's around sports, right? You have things like fitness, right? You have things like, Faye is one of our clients, the yogurt brand. We did a whole home gating campaign around the NFL season and made recipes go viral, right? There's a whole lifestyle around that. There's trick shot artists in every sport that you can partner with to do really cool things. And Dude Perfect is somebody that we've had a relationship with for a long time who is awesome, but there's also a lot of other creators coming out that are in that space as well. Then you have like the OG kind of fan communities, and those are always going to exist, and those are always going to prevail in my view. And if that's a community that's really important to your brand, you should activate there. But there's a whole ecosystem that goes all the way around sports, and I think that's where all the magic is, to be frank. If you can find a really authentic way in and something interesting to say, and you're really kind of, you approach it with more of a scalpel than kind of a broadcast pitch with celebrity level talent, I think that's where the win is.
So, I think part of the interesting thing is athletes, right? As ambassadors or entering into this new space where they now have influence at their hands and they're learning how to work with brands. They're learning the power of their communities. They are limited in the channels and access that they get. When we worked at Super Bowl to launch Live Plus, we worked with Braxton Berrios, and him and I spoke a lot about the potential for our technology to help him fuel all of the new community engagement because they just want to be close to the players. So for athletes, does that put more pressure on them now? And is that something that you guys are guiding people on?
Yeah, I mean, I would argue that any athlete today who feels like they have any level of professional future needs to have, yes, their athlete hat on, but also their creator hat on, because that's going to sustain their businesses. And when they build a direct relationship with an audience, that's what's going to power them once they're done on the field, And a lot of athletes are starting to get a clue here and starting to kind of build up these audiences. Examples I'll give, two of my favorite, Meg Rapinoe and Sue Bird. I happen to know them both. They obviously were the best in each of their sports. And then they went on to start this podcast that's now incredibly popular. And fueling huge levels of business for them, So I think it's a mandatory, to be honest. And athletes that aren't doing it are really missing the boat. They better be really good on the field. Let's just say that.
And I love that you just brought them up, because this is kind of where I wanted this to go a little bit. I think women athletes actually have figured that out more than anything else. And I think that's why you're seeing actually a huge spike in women's sports attention, is almost around the players themselves having such a good sense of how to build their own personal brands and wanting to stand for something in their personal brands.
Yeah, 100%. And so one of our partners is Open Doors, so I know you know really well as well. I was just talking to their CEO this morning, and they're seeing 30% higher engagement rates with female athletes on their platform. They have all kinds of athletes on their platform that you can do deals with. And so female athletes is really a ripe opportunity for brands to jump into. And I would say even more specifically, brands should be taking a hard look at the WNBA, because there you have both the diversity and the female athlete angle. And I think that is honestly like one of the best places to spend money right now. And they could not be hotter on social media. Like Angel Reese has had lines around the block for activations she's doing. Stewie did a big thing with Puma the other day and right near my office, and that was all the way around the block, the audience, and it was mainly her social media that was posting that. And I think there's a huge opportunity there right now, and it's going to go beyond basketball. But I, as a former basketball player, I think basketball is having a moment in the women's space, and this is the opportunity to jump in right now.
Yeah, so WNBA is really interesting, and you and I had the pleasure of kind of working a little bit on that together a year ago, where they were really kind of driving into the full force of really taking advantage of that position, the attention that they were getting. I would love for you to explain to everyone the Caitlin Clark effect, because we've talked about it a million times, and I think that is probably the best example of being able to capitalize on an athlete in a organic, authentic way that is actually really natural to drive new participation and viewers.
I mean, Caitlin's amazing. I've seen her play at the college level and then at the professional level, and she's kind of one of these game-changing athletes. It's kind of like the Larry Bird moment for the WNBA in some ways. She built up such a following at the college level and then brought it with her into the W. But my favorite part about it, though, is that when she went into the W, it wasn't just about Caitlin Clark. There were stadiums filled all around the country in many different markets, and the WNBA is expanding into several new markets, including, I believe, Toronto is the next one, right? And it's really exciting. And yes, it's Caitlin that's bringing the college audience in, but there's also very much a bigger audience for the W that's happening right now in culture. And we're just at the beginning of it, in my opinion.
So one last question and then we'll wrap up, but I would love to hear from you, like when we're thinking about anyone who's playing in this space, what are 3 pieces of advice right now that they can do to really dive in and really start to test the waters if sports and tapping into that audience is right for them as a brand?
Yeah, I think it helps to have technology inform your decisions. So make sure you have the right tools to navigate the space, right? You want to match your audience with audiences that are out there in the ecosystem. Selfishly, my agency is very good at that. We can do it, but there's other technology out there that you can use even if you can't afford an agency, right? So I think that's a really important piece of it. I think do not over-index on the celebrity front. I don't think there's the win there. I actually think it can hurt you, to be honest. As you can see, just look at the past election. We had all the mega celebrities in the world, from Taylor Swift to Oprah to Beyonce endorsing Kamala Harris. Did that result in a win? No, right? So I think the celebrity conversation is honestly a little flooded, and people are jaded by celebrity activations right now. And again, the win is more at the micro level, direct, authentic engagement with an audience. That's where the win is.
Well, thank you, Megan. Appreciate it. And thank you guys for listening.